Now then, bang a monkey here. Slightly the worse for wear this morning. Good night last night, but and it is very early morning because I'm sort of rushing this one a little bit because we're getting away in the camper van for a couple of days. So I hope I get things almost right anyway. But this is the letter P. It's been another difficult one, P. I mean, bloody hell. I mean, you'd expect me to have none of me Presley or Pink Floyd or Charlie Parker albums up to date, and I'm not. But there's also no Iggy Pop, no Graham Parsons, no Peter Perrott, no Pavement, that brilliant American band, no Psychedelic Furs, no Pogues, one of my favourite bands of the 80s, and yeah, no Perubu, who I seen in Newcastle and I've always liked, and no Graham Parker. So there's lots and lots of P's that I've not included in this handful that I'm going to briefly talk about today. So I'll get started with 1963. This is a guy called Arthur, and I hope I pronounce it right, Prysock, or Prysock, P-R-Y-S-O-C-K, Arthur Prysock, and there he is, squatting there, fag in his hand, cardigan on, looking like, I don't know, the bloke from down the pub around the corner. And he's a crooner, he's a jazz crooner, and I love hearing a rich, sort of jazzy singing voice, brilliant, beautiful. And this is a great album. It's an album of love songs, Blue Velvet, I Left My Heart in San Francisco, Fly Me to the Moon, all those sorts of classics on there, beautifully done, lovely backing with a band and orchestra. And I just want to quote a couple of things about Arthur's voice, which probably sum it up. This is from his obituary in the New York Times. It says his heavy, deep voice projected a calm, reassuring virility. And the blurb on the back of the album, actually it says, Arthur has the voice most men wish they had, and the kind of voice a woman would want their man to have. So yeah, he's got a lovely voice, he's got a sort of deep baritone voice. He sings songs pretty straight ahead really, but that's all he needs to do with a voice like that. So that's Arthur Prysock, Coast to Coast, 1963. The next one's a guy, you might not be familiar with this guy's name, but you probably have heard his work. This is Armando Peraza, or Peraza. He was Cuban, born pre-revolution Cuba, into abject poverty. He was into all sorts of dodgy stuff by the time he was 10, 11, 12, and apparently he'd heard through a mate that there was a band looking for a congas player, so he applied and he quickly taught himself the congas, and he got the gig, and that was it. And before too long he was off to America, playing in the sort of jazz sort of scene, and he's played with all sorts of people, but most famously he was a member of Santana for about 20 years and still played with Santana during some of their sort of reunion concerts. And this is just one of those albums you want to, when the sun's out, get the speakers into the garden and get the mojito knocked up and put this on. It's feel good, it's Latin, it's called Wild Thing. It's from 1969. They actually cover the Trogs' Wild Thing, but also a couple of his own compositions that are really good. So yeah, lovely percussion, just a joy to listen to. Armando Peraza, Wild Thing, 1969. The next one's also from 1969, and this is the great jazz pianist, virtuoso jazz pianist, Oscar Peterson. And this is called Hello Herbie. It's a bit of a naff title in some ways, but the Herbie it refers to is Herbie Ellis, the white guy on this picture with Oscar Peterson and his members of his trio. And in the earlier 50s, 52 to 56 or so, Herb Ellis was a member of the Oscar Peterson trio. He's a guitarist, and the trio then consisted of piano, bass and guitar. But Herb Ellis left to join Ella Fitzgerald's band, and Peterson replaced him with a drummer. And this is a four-piece. This is a sort of reunion. So the whole album is led by Peterson's brilliant piano playing and Herb Ellis's superb guitar playing. And you know, when one's playing the lead, the other one is playing great sort of chords behind the lead. And it's sort of varied in moods and tempo. And as well as being a great album and just a great example of Peterson's talent, it's and Ellis's talent, it's a great sounding album as well. There's great clarity and separation between the instruments, lovely to listen to. So Oscar Peterson, Hello Herbie, 1969. The next one, this is some album. This is an absolute cracker. I'm going to open it right up so you can see the artwork. Unfortunately, this is in black and white, so you won't get the full appreciation of that sort of proggy, surrealistic artwork. And then inside the gatefold, a great picture of Billy Paul on some sort of mountain top, looking like a prophet on the mountain top with his robes on. And this is War of the Gods, Billy Paul from 1973. And Billy Paul is one of the sort of Philadelphia soul school. You'll be most familiar with him for his great single hit he had with Me and Mrs. Jones, which I love. I always stick it on in the pub jukebox. But this is nothing really like that. I mean, yeah, he's got his superb singing voice, dominates the record, but this is there's just 6 tracks on side 1. Both of them are nearly 10 minutes long. I See the Light and War of the Gods, both absolutely brilliant tracks, and these take soul music into a whole other dimension. I mean, this is prog soul, prog psychedelic soul. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Side 2, 4 tracks, all of them fantastic, particularly the last track, Peace, Holy Peace, really, really uplifting stuff. Yeah, definitely try and give that one a listen. It's just so different. Billy Paul made some great albums in the early 70s. In my opinion, this was the best. It was perhaps the most different, and maybe it didn't do commercially as well as some of the others, but this is, yeah, a real cracker. Billy Paul, War of the Gods, 1973. The next one up, I think these are a really underrated band. This is Procol Harum. This is Procol's 9th, and obviously it was their 9th album, and they'd run out of ideas for album titles, but I could have put one of their earlier albums, which were perhaps more critically acclaimed, you know, but this one I think is my favourite, and that's partly because I think it's just the whole album consistently showcases their sort of epic sound, and Gary Brooker's brilliant voice and Mick Grabham's guitar, and it's just, I think, a really strong example of Procol Harum at their best generally throughout this record. But the other reason is maybe the first 2 tracks. I think one of my favourite Procol Harum tracks is the single Pandora's Box, which kicks this album off. Brilliant track. And that's followed by another superb track, Fool's Gold, and I just think they're really strong, and I just love listening to this album. So that's Procol's 9th from 1975. And then lastly, under the letter P, this is a group from Glasgow, the Pastels. They were formed 40 years ago now, 40 years ago, 1981. Sort of post-punk scene, led by a guy called Stephen McRobbie. And these are a band who've only produced, I think, a handful of albums in those 40 years. I think there's an average of 7 years between each album, and apparently this one came out, Slow Summits they call it. This one came out in 2013, and I think it was 13 years in the making. But this is superb. It's summery, it's trippy. I don't know, it feels like a sort of warm blanket when you put this on. It just wraps around you. There's a lush sort of sounds and everything. And I first heard this band in the film The Last Great Wilderness, which is a great film. I was really taken by some of the music and watched the credits at the end and found out that it was the Pastels. But beautiful stuff. Yeah, the Pastels and the singer and Stephen McRobbie's partner, Katrina, whose name it's escaped me, she does the artwork, I think, for this the album as well. So this painting is hers. But brilliant band from Glasgow, the Pastels, Slow Summits, 2013. Okay, so that's the letter P. I'll get on and nurse this hangover, and hope you join me next time. Cheers.